Sony, you thought that PC players were dumb? That you could treat us like you have your console market for years and years, ripping them off with paid online, a bunch of anti-consumer practices, heaps of overpriced subscriptions, and you thought you would get away with that on PC as well. Instead, what you may have done is thrown away an extremely successful live service game. It could have been a big game for years and years to come in Helldivers 2. You may have thrown all of that away for greed. You've ruined that all overnight with your greedy practices. And just to quickly refresh, because I am honestly surprised, the Helldivers 2 reception in the last few days to what's happened, I never expected it. Players have genuinely made their voices heard that they are not going to have this anymore. And what happened a couple of days ago is that Sony and the Helldivers 2 team, they may or may not have had a say in it, but for now, Sony themselves, they basically decided that you cannot play and access Helldivers 2 unless you link your Steam and PlayStation accounts together. Now, this was not always the case. If you bought Helldivers 2 3 or 4 weeks ago, you could just launch it up on Steam, play it, have a good time. None of this was required, so you could enjoy the game. With this change, even if you bought the game and were happily playing it, you will lose access. You will not be able to play unless you link a PlayStation account to your Steam account. So if you don't have a PSN account, you will have to make one to play and continue to enjoy the game. Now, some people will say, hold on, there's a little bit more to it, and I'll address the nuances of it in a minute. But I just have to say, firstly, I'm so pleased to see that PC players are not going to have this, that they have had enough, that there are over 100,000 negative reviews that have been left on the Helldivers 2 Steam page in like the last 2 days or something. It's genuinely incredible because I honestly thought that because Helldivers 2 was so popular, people were enjoying it, there would be outrage for like a day or two, and then that would be it. People would go back to playing, they would cave, they'd make a PSN account, and that would be the end of it. I thought realistically that would be the case, but it isn't. People are pushing back, they're requesting refunds. Some of those refunds are getting granted, by the way, as well. So Sony are losing money on this. I know the dev team's not sort of fully responsible for this. They may not even be at fault at all. We don't really know the exact answer yet. But it's good to see that Sony are copping it with this because they thought this would be a small little change. Yeah, we'll just push the line a bit. We'll just force people to make accounts. We'll continue to be greedy. But now it's actually affecting them financially, which is a massive thing. And what's happened here, this movement with the reviews, 100,000 negative reviews out of 450,000, it's a big percentage of reviews here that are negative, is a casual player, because some people will say, oh, all this outrage, it's just online people, the normie out there doesn't care about this, they're just going to play and have fun. I don't know about that. This is going to be quite big. Because your average player who just games after work, they're not looking up videos or going on wikis or anything like that, if they're looking for a live service game to play, enjoy for a couple of hours a night, and they go to the Helldivers 2 page, all they are going to see is that there are mixed reviews. They'll even see that a lot of them are mostly negative. That looks really bad. If I didn't know anything, I'd just assume this game is crap, and I'd move on to something else. I'm not going to look at the context. I don't care. I'm just looking for a fun game. I see mostly negative. I'm out of here. I'm going to play something else. A lot of people are going to do that on that casual side. So this is where it's very bad for Sony, and they have to turn this around if this game is going to grow and really get anywhere. I know people enjoy Helldivers 2. I don't have a big stake in it. I'm not a big live service person. For me, this is all about what is best for PC gamers. And we are all sick of the amount of launches, the amount of accounts that you have to create. That's the big deal here. People will argue, oh, what's the big deal? Look at this in isolation. All you have to do is put in a dummy email address, a password, and you can get on with your life. Some people say that, and I'll agree that in isolation, is this the biggest deal in the world that you have to make a PlayStation account? It's not in isolation. But this is a breaking point for a lot of people, that this has been happening for years and years. This is the worst of it, because a month ago you could play the game and now you can't unless you've got a PSN account. That is genuinely bad. It's much worse than EA and Ubisoft, where you've got to download launchers and things, because they're at least up front. You know that before you buy the game, or at least it's fairly easy to find out. Not the case with Helldivers 2, they kind of pulled the wool over people's eyes. But again, it is a breaking point, because there is that argument, it's not a big deal, why are you angry at this, but you're not angry when it's these other companies, the Epic Store and whatever. You don't have to look at it totally black and white, where you've got to be consistent. Oh, I'm only going to play games only if I don't have to download a launcher or create an account. I'm only going to play games where I don't have to do that. People can have this breaking point, where they might have accepted it for a little while, and now they've put their foot down and they've said, enough. We're not going to have this anymore. We are sick of these companies just making the PC gamer experience worse and worse. They're trying to consoleize it. They want to turn the PC into basically another console with all this crappy software we have to install, websites we've got to sign up to. No, it's not necessary. There was a day where you could just buy a game from a company's website, download the exe file, install it, and you could happily enjoy the game. That should still be something that happens. But unfortunately, these companies have pushed the line for years and years that we're just never realistically going to go back to it. Steam is probably the best thing we've got, and even that's a launcher, but at least Steam are trying to put the customer first. Most of their features, like user reviews as we see, they are there to help the customer. So I see Steam as the best of a bad situation. We've got to download software to enjoy our games, but at least it provides benefits to us. Sony, on the other hand, can get fucked. And I mentioned some of the nuances, so I see people say, oh, well, when Helldivers 2 launched, this was a requirement that you had to have a PlayStation account. But then, due to technical reasons, they removed that requirement and they continued to sell the game. They put in the fine print that they could bring this back at some point, but you could still buy and you could still play the game without a PlayStation account. It was all in the fine print that things could change. So basically, people's argument is, oh, because they technically told you before, you've got no reason to be upset now. You should have read the fine print. I don't believe that a lot of those same people would accept that from other industries. If your electricity provider or your bank did something dodgy where they said, oh, well, you didn't read like the special fine print in the terms and conditions, so now we've ripped you off. People would be ripping companies to shreds for doing something like that. And this is an entertainment product. People cannot be expected to have to read tons and tons of text to play Where's Wally on the Steam page to try and find where they've misled you, where they're trying to scam you, and live their life in that way. People should be able to just buy the game, which is overpriced as it is. You've got to pay, what, $70 microtransactions? That should be it. There shouldn't be other inconveniences along the way. And the game was clearly working without the Sony account there. They proved it was possible, it was not necessary, and it was not going to benefit the players to have that PSN account. So bringing it back was purely in Sony's benefit. No one else, the players are not getting benefits. They can bullshit you about security. As others have pointed out, Sony are not a secure company. They've been hacked a million times, data's been breached. So you can be safely assured that if you make a Sony account, at some point your data is going to be leaked, even ignoring that they're probably selling it and all of that sort of stuff. So inconveniencing us after the fact and telling people that it's their own fault for not reading fine print, it's bootlicker behavior. No one cares about it. We can say, we don't want this. I don't care about being principled in every single scenario. And oh my God, you're a hypocrite 3 years ago because you played a game where you have to make an account. Now you're complaining about this. I don't want to hear about that. In the here and now, this isn't a good thing for PC players. And it's right to push back on it. I'm so glad that people are doing it. It's totally paying off, even ignoring just the reviews themselves, which are bad for Sony. We can see that refund requests are being accepted. Now, these are people refunding Helldivers 2 who sometimes have hundreds of hours in the game, and there's a lot of posts I've seen put out there online of people putting a refund request in and it's getting approved. They're getting their money back. And this person, they have 97 hours in the game. It's not like they played for half an hour and they get their refund, which is how Steam works. You can always refund if you've got less than 2 hours playtime, I believe, in most scenarios. This person has about 100 hours and they're getting their refund. So Steam is kind of listening here as well, and they can see that players have been misled, and these people are getting their money back. I don't think it's always going to be as easy with this where you just put in the refund request and it gets approved immediately. I think some of these people have had to do a couple, and they've got to appeal or however it works, so an actual human, not an automated bot, goes through the process. So it may be a little bit of work, but if you do this, it seems like you're going to get a refund at some point. And this is where it hurts Sony, and that's the only way they're going to change. They have a reputation for being very stubborn with this crap. They see gamers as weak-minded. They always bend the knee. The next product announcement happens. They get excited. They forget about all the controversy. So they won't do much until this really affects their bottom line. I reckon they'll be a bit worried about the reviews and so on, but definitely these refunds. It's a great thing to see. There's plenty of these. Someone else who got a refund. They got 200 plus hours in the game. These are people who were having fun. They were enjoying the game. They were active players. And you're losing them because of this bullshit, because you're misreading the PC audience. People are here, they're not playing on the PlayStation 5 because they don't like that console ecosystem. It's inconvenient, it has a lot of anti-consumer practices around it. I mentioned paid online, a lot of other nonsense. That's why they're here on PC. Treating them like console players, it's a mistake, and you're seeing the consequences of that. And just to further pour fuel on the fire, all these people saying it's not a big deal, Sony are okay, guys, come on, just get back to playing the game, consume. Someone points out here in probably the top negative review on Steam for Helldivers 2, they point out that there's a list of countries where people cannot even make a PlayStation account. Now remember that all the people in these countries, Sony were happy to sell the game to them a month ago. You could buy Helldivers 2 in these places, happily play the game, but now the game is going to be blocked for you and you are going to be unable to access it if you live here. Totally outside your control, you live in one of these countries, nah, it's not possible to make a PlayStation account for whatever reason, you're fucked basically. These people have legitimately been scammed. And they'll again try and say, oh, but the fine print, if you read it, it said you had to have a PlayStation account at some point. So no, it's totally legit, guys, come on. I think people have talked about, are they going to provide a solution for them at some point? They'll figure it out. Again, it just comes down to the inconvenience. It's like you're bringing this requirement back for no reason that benefits the player. You bang on about security. Supposedly it's so you can ban people more easily. How is that benefiting us? That sounds fishy in itself. But you basically created this big headache for people, and we're not getting anything out of it. So I don't want to hear that we've got a solution for it, it's going to be fine. You created this problem, it's not necessary. Get the accounts out of here. Just let us play on Steam. That's where we've chosen to purchase. We've done that for a reason, otherwise we'd buy a PlayStation. So that's ridiculous in itself, and people point out all of the issues with Sony being hacked. Hacker groups have basically gone in there, gotten everyone's personal information, often includes things like payment information, everyone's personal details, sensitive stuff, and that's all been leaked online. This has happened multiple times, and Sony have done nothing about it. I mean, this is even a bigger problem, because it's like, if Sony were actually held accountable for this, and people went to jail or something for letting all this data get out, maybe something would have been done, and they wouldn't be able to get away with it. And to be honest, this for me, it's one thing, but I think it is totally reasonable to say, I don't want to be inconvenienced. That's it. We don't have to make these arguments about data being stolen. It's serious, but I don't even think you have to go that far. Just the inconvenience in itself, that is enough to tell Sony, here's the door, go away, don't come back to the PC place unless you're willing to play fairly and you're willing to provide us a positive experience. We've had it. These people have had it. So many negative reviews. And again, these people talking about an overreaction, Sony actually changed their FAQ at some point. It was either right before they implemented this change where you have to have a PlayStation account, or they did it right after when the controversy started exploding. So the short of it is, on, I believe, their website, there was a question here that originally said, do I have to sign into PlayStation to play a PlayStation game on PC? And the answer was, signing into PlayStation is optional when playing a PlayStation game on PC, so totally optional. You can choose if you want the great benefits. Are there any? I don't even think trophies and things come across, but it was optional, you could choose. They updated that, and the question is the same. Do I have to sign into PSN to play a PlayStation game? But it now reads, the answer reads, some PlayStation games may require you to sign in and link to an account for PSN. So they've sneakily, weaselly changed that wording. As usual, treating their customers as idiots, like we're not going to know what the Wayback Machine is. So we can't find out that they've been this sneaky. So they haven't got away with this either. Now, there are a lot of moving parts with this. It's hard to speak on all of it. But I do want to make that distinction between Arrowhead, the developer, and Sony, the publisher. I think most people can agree that Sony are the ones mostly in the wrong here. It's not as if Arrowhead are the ones really pushing the PlayStation accounts, and this is from them. It's almost certainly from Sony. Even the announcement of the account creation being mandatory coming back, that was signed off as coming from Sony. But I still don't think Arrowhead are 100% squeaky clean, because all of this time, Arrowhead have known that the mandatory requirement was going to come back, that you would have to start making PSN accounts again. I don't believe that they weren't aware of that. They know from dealing with Sony that it was a big thing for them. So they were aware, and they never really communicated that to players clearly. They put it on the Steam page, but it was hidden. Most people weren't aware. They were happily buying the game. Arrowhead were taking our money. And they weren't communicating that this was going to change, that they would pull the rug out at some point. I don't think that's a great thing. You could argue that Sony forced them to do it that way, but you do reach a point where you might be worshipping the company Arrowhead a bit too much. You have to at least accept that they are accountable to some of this. I don't think all of it, even most of it. 99% of this might be Sony, but I still don't think that Arrowhead are perfect. You can see that with their community managers as well. Arrowhead's community managers, some of them were insulting players, saying that typical stuff like, oh, if you don't like it, get a refund, go away, we don't want to deal with you. Just being obnoxious. It's not all of them, but some of them were. These are the sorts of people, pronouns in the bio, rainbow flags, all of that sort of crap. And Arrowhead are hiring these people. So I have to wonder if they're hiring clowns like that to deal with the community, how competent are the people at the top at Arrowhead? Maybe some of them are decent, they want the best for players, and this has really taken them by surprise, but I don't think Arrowhead are a perfect company either. Either way, this is incredible to see that people they're putting their money where their mouth is. There are genuinely people who've been enjoying Helldivers 2, but they're taking a stand to this nonsense. Account creations, potentially launches from Sony in the future. They don't want that to happen, so they're saying, I'm willing to sacrifice fun right now to make sure that gaming, PC gaming especially, is going to continue to be a positive thing in the future. So I really respect people who are doing that, and it's great to see Sony losing here. Thanks so much for listening. I'll see you on the next one. Cheers. Bye.